Hello, and welcome to our webinar, How Real-Time Hyperlocal Data Gives CPGs an Advantage. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ian Sexton, Head of Sales and Marketing at Datasembly. Following today's presentation, we'll be taking questions. To submit a question, click on the QA icon in your meeting toolbar. A window appears with a message box located at the bottom of the window. It will say, type your question here. Type your question and click send. At the end of the presentation, ML and Kira will read the questions, and I'll answer the easy ones and Craig will answer the tough ones. Now, as my colleagues will confirm, I don't know anything, but you'll be relieved to know that I know Craig and Craig knows everything. So over to Craig.
Excellent. Thank you, Ian. I will do my best to live up to that expectation. To set the stage for today, I'll be walking you through just a couple slides that talk about how we're able to provide you with those insights that Ian mentioned as the subject of this webinar. And then we'll jump right into some scenarios. We'll walk through quite a few things that give you some insights, ideas on what you can leverage, and we will go from there, and as Ian said, into Q&A. So I will take myself off camera here real quick, and we will jump right in. So just a couple quick slides. We'll talk about our understanding of the retail landscape, understanding that it has fundamentally changed. And this is important because this is what allows Datasembly to deliver to you all the data that allows you to make those insight changes. So we know as consumers, our behavior has changed, right? As we maybe shop for, items online at Walmart, we might cross-check those prices. I know when I was shopping on Prime Day a few weeks ago, I was cross-referencing those prices, and that sort of consumer behavior has driven an unprecedented level of just data that's available in the public domain. And what we do, we virtually shop those aisles and we bring that data back to you. We compile it, Datasembly compiles that data on a weekly basis. You come in on Monday, you've got fresh, current, hyperlocal data in front of you. So what do we do with that? As I said, we shop across thousands of locations, grocery, big box club. We gather from delivery platforms as well. And we take it to the tune of 1 billion rows of data a day, 7 billion rows of data every week. We want to make sure that we do for you that Datasembly takes that information, compiles it, and presents it in a way that you can get valuable insights from it. And that's what we'll show you today. So billions of data points every single week from public sources. We take that jumble of dots, and those will become very meaningful for you here in a minute, where we look at each dot representing an actual physical store location, colors representing price, and we turn that into an organized thought, right? An organized insights that we can help you with. Things that we're capturing more than just pricing data that we'll take a look at here in a couple minutes, right? Regular price and by the weight price, promotional prices, right? EDLP plus those rollback prices or loyalty promotions. We show you how that all comes to life and the historical information that will help you make decisions there. Assortment, launching new products or seasonal items. How does that rollout look and what can we learn from that? As well as capturing purchase options. We'll show you today the in-store pricing, but we're absolutely capturing delivery pricing. There are other ways to present that to you. But this is kind of the basis that lets us walk through what we're going to show you today and some of the items that we're going to learn. So with that, we will start here quickly with one product. I am virtually shopping my aisles at a local Kroger. I'm a fan of root beer. We're going to take a look at some information on this 12-pack of cans of A&W root beer. Setting that stage, what we can look at is that was actually on promotion. And when I come into Datasembly, we're looking at some interesting things. So to set the stage for what we're going to talk about for this product, we're looking at this across 7 different retailers: Dillon's, H-E-B, Hy-Vee, Kroger, Walmart, Wegmans. And we're looking at this over the course of 42 weeks from the beginning of the year. The other thing to note as we start to look at this pretty colors in the histogram here and what we're learning from that is I'm looking at the lowest available price. Now, if you strictly wanted to consume this data and look across list price only, promotional price, absolutely something you can do. I'm going to go forward today just looking at best possible price, lowest possible price. Things that we're immediately able to learn about this product and looking at our count of prices over time is looking at how many stores we're at a given price point. So if I hover over any of these columns here, I'm able to see that on February 16th, $4.58, we collected that price, observed that price from 2,679 stores. And you can see some ebb and flow here of this product and what the pricing was. And we can start to learn here through this little bit of history is if we look at when the pandemic was hit and everybody was in lockdown, we see some interesting things. For this particular product, we see that pricing was actually a little bit less. There were some promotions being run on this product during those first few weeks of everybody being locked down. Going further out, we can look at across, again, those 7 retailers, how that price fluctuation has changed, how many stores at a given price point, right? And again, this is just a small set of history. For any of the products we're going to look at today across these retailers, there are potentially a couple of years or maybe more of historical data that you can look at, and that will become really meaningful as we talk about, knowing that a lot of retailers tend to do things they've done before. So when you can expect certain products to be on promotion, or even some historical information about product launches. So we'll walk into that one a little bit. Other things that we're able to look at here, just before we really dive into the hyperlocal specific stores, summaries by week and even counted promotional prices. So that 12-pack of root beer that we looked at on Kroger's site, it was on a sale 3 for $12.99. So as Datasembly works to capture this information for you, and what you can leverage from it is not only your promotional pricing, but the type of promotion. What was the nature of that promotion? You can see here, at 6% of the total here, it was at a 3 for $12.99, right? So there's some insight not only to it being on promotion and when, but what that promotion looked like. And we'll dive into some dashboards here a little bit for this particular product that will tell us a few other things about promotion and about assortment. We could look at this data across different banners and see, if it's a steady price at one or if there's some variation amongst particular retailers, right? And we've got, min, max, mean, and all sorts of good pricing with that. What we can learn from this is we could look at things like compliance to price, right? And we can look at trade spend impact. So if I come into a map view of this, where we are looking at, again, every price point being every dot being a retailer, and there's a price point associated with that. So what we're looking at here across the country for this retailer, we've got some interesting things. We know our mean price here at $4.31, and we see some color variation, right? Where it's on promotion and maybe areas where it's not on promotion, but other things that we can learn about it just from setting this map in motion from the beginning of the year are things like distribution. Is this where we expect it to be, right? So as I'm looking at a product set, what does my distribution look like? What's availability look like? Is it where I expect it to be? And is it at a price point where I expect that to be? Some existing Datasembly clients are using this to, again, make sure they're looking at trade spend, right? Are they looking at a region of a store that has it at a certain price, or are they able to go hyper local into that exact store location and look at a price for that? Again, so as we set this in motion, we see some changes in colors and pricing and availability. You can see where it has come and gone, especially here. We're early February now, and we can watch over the next couple of clicks what happens over the course of that lockdown. We see this going on promotion. We see that price dropping, and then we see availability change, right? And if we wanted to take a look at this from the most recent, and if we wanted to zoom into a particular area, we could go down to the store level here near Atlanta and see exactly what's happening across the stores that are in this region. And any one of these stores, I can see in Kroger, I've got it at $5.49, and then right across the street at a Walmart, I have this at $3.50. So again, as you're looking at trade spend and looking at whether it's an entire retailer that has it at one price point, or if it's just a few stores, this hyperlocal, and again, near real-time data, we're looking at very, very current information, is going to let you see that exact thing. As you look at compliance information, right? Are these retailers listing this on their sites at the price we expect them to be? And again, at any given area that is important to you, right? So we look at that data set of what retailers and what locations make sense for you all. We can scroll down a little bit from here. And again, we've got those banners where we can take a look at what that trend line looks like across that banner. We do capture, again, it's every store, right? So if we wanted to look at a particular store or see, real quickly do a sort on this and see which stores have that price lower, absolutely quick information that you can get to, whether it's from a map or from a data standpoint, making sure that price is complied to, and that how many stores might be selling it at a different price from what expected. We also do, as we shop these aisles, and Datasembly will gather for you those images, right? So that you know your product is represented correctly on those retailers' websites. And we do have our history available here and where we're capturing this from, again, just to make sure that your product is showing as you expect it to be showing. So we know just with this first quick example, again, as we look at those prices, we know that we can see trends, right? We've got some good history here. We can see as promotions come and go, and we'll dive into some more promotional information on this. We know that in the map, we can look at change in pricing and availability, and we'll dive into those a little bit further as well. But as we start to think about the consuming this data and learning from it and what we can tell, whether it's a retailer, again, multiple retailers, what that looks like, what that pricing and promotion looks like. You do have the ability to take this data and look at it really in multiple ways. If you wanted to focus on only, as I said, stores in a certain region or stores within a certain distance from another retailer, right? That's up to you, and it really starts to paint the picture of why that hyper-local pricing and information is critically important. To give you one quick example of that, I've just zoomed here into the Los Angeles area. And I'm only looking at Walmart right now. And, the assumption here is that, well, Walmart's prices are priced in a given region. We know that that isn't true, right? We can very easily zoom in here to Garden Grove and see that Walmart's right down the road from one another for this product. One is at $275 and 2 blocks away, it's at $339. So as we think about pricing at that hyper-local level, being able to drill down, zoom into those regions, those retailers that are critical to you and understand what's happening at that level, will help you make those decisions more efficiently and more quickly. From here, I've got a couple other examples that I want to make sure that we do walk through. The next one is going to be just a Dasani natural purified water, right? Another product that we see all over the country. And this histogram gives us a little bit different of a story. Again, we're looking at this across that 42 weeks from the beginning of the year. And this time we don't see this on promotion during the first parts of lockdown and quarantine. We actually see that this was much less available, right? And we all know that water was something that people were running out and buying, but we're able to see that. And then we're able to see what has happened post-lockdown, right? And start to make some, potentially some predictions about what we can expect to see from these sorts of products if we go on lockdown again, and what we might want to do and make our adjustments that way. This is also a really interesting one to look at in a map view, right? Because again, as I mentioned, this map is going to let you take a look at not only your pricing as it relates to mean pricing, but what that availability is, right? And where that distribution is. So we can watch in this one here in March, we can see that it starts to drop off. It's not as available. And then as it comes back on, what happens to pricing, right? So as we get through that. So another interesting data point for us to take a little bit of a look into. The next one I want to jump through real quick here is a product launch. Now, this is a really interesting use case as we think about, getting your items out into retailers and what that really entails and the visibility that you have into that. So we're looking at Oatsum organic milk here, and I know that this product was launched here in June, and it was a strategic launch at a certain time of year and post what we just talked about for some of the initial lockdown. But what we're able to do is see, what stores are carrying this, and I'm just looking at this across one retailer, but we can look at that distribution, right? And I know that this was launched in a small couple of stores, and if I set this in motion, from this summer, right, we can take a look at how this went across the country. What areas was it trialed in, and then how did it go through, in this case, to the rest of the Kroger stores. This gets really interesting, obviously, with your new product launches or seasonal items to look at how it played out through time. One of the great things that Datasembly makes available to you, because we've been virtually shopping these aisles for a long time, is we're going to provide you that history as well. So if you wanted to take a look at, your historic product launches, or maybe even competitive product launches, you're absolutely able to do that. Again, because we are looking at those billions of data points a day and we're capturing them from publicly available sources, this data is shareable, right? So, and you could buy whatever set of data you want. You could access, again, competitive information, your information, and then as you want to take this information and bring it to retailers and talk about rollout plans or anything like that, you're absolutely able to share this information with anyone that needs to have it. So you guys can help drive the business that way. So product rollout, really interesting. There's an interesting story here. We've got where we watch the rollout of a product across the year, and as different retailers come in and come out and what happens to price changes, it's a great way to visualize what's happening with these new product launches. Okay. Same sort of information on this one, where if we only wanted to look at a set of retailers or a region or maybe even metro areas, right? What's important to you in a given area, or you know that certain organizations launch stuff in a certain place, watching what's happening there with pricing. It's really up to you how you want to, what data set you want to leverage. Okay, but the insights don't change. You know, am I where I'm supposed to be? How am I pricing? What's my competitive pricing? Again, because it's publicly available information. Another quick scenario, I'm jumping back out to the Kroger site. We know that there have been items that are in high demand, and that's changed how some retailers are listing, you know, those items, right? And what they're making available, whether they are limiting purchases, whether they're showing on the website is not available, and how do you see that in the Datasembly data? So I've just pulled up some Clorox disinfecting wipes for us here, and we can dive into a couple of things, right? We know pre-pandemic, we could all run out to the store and buy these. And then retailer behavior changed, right? And a lot of times what we saw was that they were pulling this information off of their site completely. I wasn't able to buy it. I wasn't able to see that it was out of stock. We just had no visibility into it. Now, as we've started to come out of this and inventories have changed a little bit, we're starting to see that it's available in more places for that click and collect. Okay. So a lot of different things that we can garner from this, you know, outside of just strictly looking at pricing information, is what can we learn about, you know, distribution and availability and in stocks and out of stocks, and then watching that progress on that map view is going to give us a great idea, give you a great idea of what's happening with your products and those competitive products. So again, just a couple of quick snapshots of some different scenarios with what's happening with pricing. Hyper-local level, you guys can zoom into any area that you want and understand exactly what's happening with that product set that's of impact to you and meaningful to you, and take that data to those conversations that you're having with the retailers. So from here, what we've looked at is really a way to explore the product and start to get some information on what's happening. Now I want to talk and shift a little bit and talk a little bit more about what you can do with this data from an analysis standpoint, right? And as we think about that and that visualization, I start to think about dashboards, right? And what is Datasembly making available to you to really help you understand what's happening with your product offerings at these different locations. So as we think about those dashboards, the first one I'm going to jump into is a CPG dashboard that we have built that shows us a couple different things. So we'll set the stage here for what this data set is. I'm looking across all my retailers, right? And we collect from over 100 retailers in every location at those 100 retailers every single day. 7 billion data points a week. What you need to know about that is you don't have to figure out how to get your way through all 7 billion data points, right? As I've said, you'll pick what's important to you, what stores are critical to you, what locations are critical to you, and then this sort of dashboard helps you dig into that information. But for today, I'm looking at this across all stores, right? We can see on this map, I've got 11,599 stores that I'm looking at. My product category in the top, I had 2 categories built for today. I grabbed a soda category, and then I built a non-dairy milk. We talked about root beer and then oat milk. We'll dive into a few of those, but this is important when we start talking about personalization, right? And making sure that this data is impactful to you. You're able to build out those lists. So whether it's just your products that you wanted to be able to look at in this manner, or yours and see what's happening with those competitive products, that's able to be done. And then you can see exactly what's happening from this, showing us average price and promotion and assortment, those 3 things that we talked about already. I'll dig into those a little bit more. Banner names, right? I've enabled every banner here, but this is something that we could pick and choose, right? And Datasembly allows you to do that to make sure that you're looking at those data points that are 100% critical. I've grabbed this data. We're looking from the end of March through the end of September. And what I've got here, I've got my soda group. I've got 18 products in that soda group, and I've got them across all those selected banners. And what I can do here in the map is every single store, every banner is on here. And they all have their unique individual shapes over on the left-hand side, so we can see what they are. But I'm strictly looking at price right now for these soda items. And I could hover over any one of these price points. I can see this Walmart in Colorado. I've got my average best price across that product set is $4.20. I've also got insight immediately into how many of those products on my watch list they actually have in their assortment, right? So I can see that particular Walmart has 13 of my important items on that list. what I could do from here if I wanted to, I could continue to explore my stores here. If I wanted to focus specifically on that A&W root beer, I could come over here and I could look at, maybe it's this average price I want to look at. And again, we can see during those first periods of COVID, this one is priced pretty low. I could pick a week if I wanted to here. And now what we're going to look at is just that product on the map. And we can look at the average price for that product. Again, I'm looking across all retailers. So I can see that we observed pricing for this at over 3,000 stores on that week. And we'll show you what that is. If I come back up to here, we'll stay with the same Walmart in Colorado. You can see now I'm showing the average best price for just that product at that Walmart for that week. I can take this the next step as well, and I could look at promotion information. So when I select, I think I picked a week early. When I pick the same week for that promotion, my map is going to refresh. We're going to look at promotions, and I could zoom back in. Now what's happening is the green icons are telling me where this item was on promotion, right? And I could dig into the exact stores where this exact item was on promotion for that week. So again, back into Colorado, I'm looking at just one item. I see that's true. This item was on promotion at that Walmart for that week. Right, so some interesting data that we can dive into. Knowing it was on promotion from what we looked at before in the histogram and interpreting that, I can now dig into the individual locations, the individual banners where these items were on promotion. So we will come out of that one. We will take a look. I'm going to go into, sorry, I just refreshed here. We're going to go into looking at a little bit about oat milk here. And one of the things that'll be interesting with this is we're going to take a look now, again, with that oat milk. Let me just refresh that real quick. We're going to take a look at what happens there, and we'll talk about availability on a broader stroke with oat milk. So as mentioned, we've got all of our non-dairy milks that I've lumped together in my product group, the list that's important for me. Same thing's happening on the map here, all the locations that do carry that. Down below, I've got all the different items that are in this product group. And if I was curious as a CPG, who's carrying, or if I want to focus my attentions on only those retailers that are carrying a specific amount or percentage of my assortment, we could absolutely do that. So I've got 18 items here where I've looked at for this non-dairy, and I've got all my banners selected here across the middle. Maybe I just want to focus on Albertsons, right? And I could tailor this down and just look at Albertsons and see for Albertsons during this time frame, in which locations, how much of my assortment did they have, right? So I could see Albertsons in California had half of my assortment. Albertsons in Nevada had a third of my assortment, right? So it's a really easy graph to consume. If you wanted to then focus this down and say, you know what, I'm really only interested in a handful of banners and a couple of my products, or maybe we leave them all on, and then I could say, I really just want to focus on those that have, a majority of my assortment. We can set those filters, you can set those filters, and then that map will revise and you'll be looking at only those stores that have that portion of your assortment. Okay. So again, I think this comes into play and becomes really important when we think about, this is publicly available data that we're compiling and presenting for you. This doesn't have to be a list of just your items, right? If you want to look at, your items versus the full list of competitive items and see which retailers are carrying what percentage of assortment for both, absolutely something that can be done, right? So this data set can be kind of as broad or as narrow as you need that to be to help you reach those critical business decisions. Okay. So a couple things here. Again, it's product sets that are critical to you. This is a lists that you can define. And again, making sure that you can, in fact, select into any of these and take a look at pricing, specific promotion information, or specific assortment information to make sure your items are where you think they should be. So I think I talked a little quicker than I had anticipated, but Ian, this is the point where I think we wanted to get to QA and maybe make sure we did cover all the things I wanted. But I think as typically happens in these, I probably spoke a little bit quicker and got a little bit excited. So I'm going to stop the sharing here, and we will jump into our quick Q&A session. Or not quick, we'll just jump into a Q&A session.
Yeah, no problem at all. That was great. I enjoyed it anyway. Yeah, so we can obviously take more questions then in that case, and perhaps be ready, Craig, if you get a chance to dive back in, if there's anything that any questions that come up that would be best illustrated looking back.
Absolutely, and I'll try to talk slower if that's the case.
All right, no problem. I was able to follow it, so you know, that's a pretty low bar to set. So I think that's great. Great. So Kira and ML, would you mind reading us the first question?
Ian, sure. This is ML.
Ah, great. Thank you.
How much does this cost?
Good question. So as you saw from what Craig showed, there's an enormous amount of data. So there's 7 billion rows of data a week, and we have history going back for over 4 years. And so you don't have to buy it all. If you bought it all, it would be a lot of money, right? So the price is going to depend on how much of that data you need to see every week. We typically have a monthly subscription, typically for a minimum of a year, and the subscription cost at the very lowest end would be probably you know, a couple of $1,000s a month, and then at the top end, if you wanted every retailer, every item, every week, lots of history, then it would be, you know, over $1 million, well over $1 million. So that gives you some idea of the range. But you don't have to buy, you don't have to buy like an entire category. If you had 10 items, if you were, you know, a smaller CPG and you had 10 items of your own, and that's all you wanted to track to begin with, and you only wanted to track it across, you know, 3 or 4 retailers, then we'd be at that minimum entry level. And then you can always start at that point, and then if you want to start looking at your competitors' items, then we can introduce, you know, let's just say you had, you know, 2 main competitors, and you wanted to see 10 items from each of those, so we can add that into the mix as well. And then if you want to add more retailers, then you can do that. You could even distill it down by geography if you wanted to, and just look at certain segments of the United States, or actually North America.
Great. And next question is, how long does it take for the data to become available to users?
Great. So we are out in the field, so to speak, collecting this data every day. We have a pretty good idea of what each retailer's cadence is in terms of when they change prices of their items. And so we start to collect that data after they've changed it. And so typically, for example, let's just say a retailer like Walmart changes their prices on a Saturday. We start collecting it on a Saturday. We are collecting it through the end of the day, Sunday. We're collecting from all, you know, close to 4,700 Walmarts, and we're collecting, you know, all the items. And we make that available Monday morning. I think the earliest that we typically make it available is like 4 a.m. Eastern time on Monday morning. So when you're looking at that data, you're looking at Sunday's information, and based on the cadence that we've got, it's probably fresh, if you like. It's probably the accurate pricing information that's in those stores for the remainder of the week until they change it again. We do have programs that are specific, you know, that you can ask us to do, where we track some items on a daily basis and sometimes on parts of days. We're collecting this information not only for stores, but we're also collecting for e-commerce. So, you know, the Walmart.com, Amazon Fresh, those kinds of things. And we're collecting delivery pricing, shipped, and Instacart. And so for a given retailer, we might have 3 or 4 different sets of data: the in-store price, the delivery price, the online price, you know, for delivery and the local delivery piece. So, that's the kind of information we're collecting. And in those cases, we usually make that daily information that we're collecting available next day. That's typically what we can do. So if you're running a promotion and you want to track it very, very closely while it's launching, then we can provide that information for you on a next day basis.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, it's Kira. I've got the next question. Someone asking, what size companies are we usually helping?
Well, we run the gamut, right? So because you don't have to buy an entire category, we can get you started at that minimum level, and that could be a startup, smaller CPG, right? That, as I said, might have 10 items or even less, right? And if there was some reason that you wanted to go, beyond, and get something even less than a weekly data feed or access to the information that we just seen, then we could come up with some kind of report-based solution for you where we delivered you a report, once a month or something like that for even less money if your budget isn't big enough to get into the sort of entry-level piece. And then we go all the way up to the world's largest CPG as a customer, and so are a few others at that high end, and one or two of the largest retailers in the United States are also customers, as well as a lot of regional, large regional retailers and mid-range CPGs.
Thanks, Ian. What does this one say? How much history can you provide? So I guess they want to know how far back can you provide history?
Right. So we have history depending on, we have history for some retailers going back more than 4 years. So, that's the case for Walmart, for example. We typically will provide 12 months history, as part of our subscription. That's still a lot of data. And so that's going to depend on whether, you can consume that kind of data. But, it's useful, particularly, this year when we've, obviously with the COVID pandemic, a lot of pricing, a lot of assortment, a lot of promotional activity has been very different this year from previous years. And so it's been useful to be able to look back at last year and this year to see, well, what are the differences, what's happening. And as we come out of this, hopefully, fairly soon, it'll be useful to be able to go back to, 2019 to look at the promotional calendars, rather than necessarily looking at 2000, none of us, I don't think, want to remember 2020 particularly distinctly. So we might not want to look at that. We might want to go back further. So we can always make available to you, all of the history that we have, if that's something that you need.
Hey, Ian, question. This may be a correct question. I apologize in advance if I missed this, but are you able to track inventory depletion of a product by store?
Great.
Yeah, we absolutely can. So one of the items we showed and is that availability by store. So we did two things. We showed you assortment in any given week, right? And what of those items you're tracking were available in a given store. We do collect whether it's marked as sold out, or we can notice in the app, as you did with the disinfectant, whether it's just not listed. So you have at the store level, absolutely, you're able to see availability. Great question.
Awesome. Do you limit the number of users who can use the application at my company?
We do not.
Right. No.
The short answer, Andy, you're welcome to.
So our objective is, if you've got when you sign up for a subscription, you'll have a domain email address, and so any of your employees that have that email address can access our solution. That's the idea. So you could move this anywhere in your organization. And the reason that we like to do that is we basically want you to become addicted to this data as much as possible throughout your organization. And the more people are using it, the better from our perspective.
Awesome. Okay, next question. What kind of customers do you currently have, and who at those companies use this type of information?
Great. So if what we haven't talked about much today is we do also cover quick service restaurants, QSRs, and so we've got some customers in that area. We haven't talked about that. It's a slightly different market. We haven't talked about that today. And then our customers are pretty much divided between retailers themselves, who are interested in what their competitors are doing and what they need to do from a pricing, promotion, and assortment perspective. And then CPGs, you know, as we talked about, small ones all the way up to very large ones. And the kinds of, let's focus, because this webinar is about CPGs, let me focus on the use cases and the areas that are usually using this. So we get like revenue management, if you like, is a big user of this solution to help correctly set pricing, you know, across the country for your items, to track your competitors, and then to track compliance, right, of your retail customers following the strategy that you've put together. Then the promotional teams in a CPG are obviously interested in this from the perspective of layering over, you know, we're collecting the everyday low price, we're also collecting the promotional information and interpreting that into a promotional price. And so keeping track of if you've agreed on a promotional calendar with your retailers, are they rolling that out correctly, and are you getting the kind of results that you want to from that promotion? And then the category management and teams are big users. And then still, if you like, at corporate, you've got the e-commerce teams are, you know, particularly at our larger CPGs, the e-commerce teams are really driving the heck out of this data from the perspective, not just around pricing, but also the area that Craig just answered, which is around availability. So in some cases, it's not the same for every retailer, but we are able, for some retailers, to actually collect in-stock information. Is it actually available for sale? At other times, we can see, is it usually there, and is it there this week? And we can make an assumption that if it's usually there and it's not there this week, then perhaps it's not in stock. It's also possible that it's been removed from the assortment. So that's another group. Sort of allied to that, there's a big drive amongst retailers, you know, largely because of COVID, to reduce the number of items that they have on the shelves. They're focusing in on their core items to make sure that they've got their supply chain correctly set up to ensure that they can deliver those core items to their customers. And they are, you know, what we're hearing from retailers and from CPGs is that the retailers are reducing their shelf, you know, the number of items they have on the shelves, at least the number of branded items they have on the shelf, by, you know, as much as 10%. And so what we're seeing amongst our CPG customers is a great interest in, okay, well, how much shelf space do we have by store, right? Which stores are carrying our range, and how is it comparing with what's happening at other, you know, with other competitive brands, or even if they're not direct competitors, other competitors for that shelf space. In other words, who else is in that category that's taking up shelf space that we really need for our items? So that's that piece. And then the final, probably not the final, but the other big area within a CPG is the sales teams, right? The teams that are dealing with, either they're dealing with the end retail customer, so that because this data is shareable, they can, you know, use this data to do joint business planning with the retailer. They can show the retailer what's happening at their competitors, right? So they can have a conversation around real data, not assumptions or things they can't necessarily share. So the sales teams are a big user of this, and the use case that Craig, described, where people are using this to, to control trade spend, is a really, typical use case for this amongst those sales teams. And then very often the sales team, for the very large retailers, you'll have a sales team perhaps, at each retailer. But for the smaller ones, you'll often be working through brokers or distributors, and so that's another area where this data becomes useful in terms of the the conversation with the broker. Very often, your view of what's happening with the retailer is a little bit opaque, and so this gives you an opportunity to get a lot more clarity around what's going on and inform your conversation with your brokers and distributors.
Yeah, and as Ian just said, one of those use cases in trade spend, right, is so a reminder of what I flew through when I was talking to you quickly. In that ability to track actual store level sales rather than random observations or at a zip code level, several of the larger manufacturers that we've referenced here were able to do that and significantly reduce their trade spend by looking at that actual store level information and matching competitors only where necessary, not across the breadth. So fantastic use case.
Oh, I have another question, Ian. Do you also provide feeds of your data so that we can use it in our other systems?
Yes, so that's typically part of our subscription. Not everybody has a way to consume it, right? But certainly our large CPGs are, at the beginning at least, they kind of assume that all they want is the data feed, right? So we are collecting a lot of, so I mentioned that we're collecting 7 billion rows of data every week. Each of those rows has an enormous amount of information. A couple of times Craig opened up, what the columns are in those rows, right? So you could see the amount of data that we've got there. And so that is made available typically as a weekly feed on a Monday morning. We provide all of the, the APIs, FTP, all those other things that I don't know what they mean, to enable you to, to take that feed and then combine it with the rest of the data. So if you're already getting data from, say, IRI or Nielsen or Spins, right, you'll be getting, market level data. You'll also be getting volume data. And you could combine, our hyperlocal data to add a lot more color and essential detail to that market level information you're getting from, the likes of IRI, Nielsen, and Spins.
Okay, another question. Is it easy to bring down the data I'm looking into an Excel so I can do my own analysis?
So I'll jump in and take this one. The short answer is yes. The slightly longer answer is absolutely yes. Built into the interface where we were looking at, we've got an icon that lets you pull down the CSV and do whatever you want to do with the data from there.
How often can I refresh my data?
Yeah, so
your data is
okay,
sorry. Your data is refreshed. Typically, it's weekly, right? So what we found is that most of this data is changed by the retailers once a week. That's typically the cadence that most retailers go through it. We do see more frequent changes for some key value items, particularly the commodity type items like eggs, milk, and butter. And so what we do for some of our customers is we go and check those items daily. And even then, though, even though we're collecting them daily, most of our customers aren't changing their prices other than weekly. And so they usually get that data, even though we collected it daily, they still process it on a weekly basis. That's the most common way for folks to do it. And so whenever you're looking at the data, it's the current week's data, right? And it's not like an IRI or Nielsen picture where this was data that was collected 2 weeks ago, right? From the point of sale system. By the time you get it, it's like 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks, stale. This is fresh data, right? That we collected up to Sunday, and you're getting it on Monday, and so it's there, and then it'll be refreshed. We refresh it automatically then on the following Monday.
Oh, thank you. That concludes all of our questions have been answered. Thank you.
Very good. Great. Well, I very much appreciate you joining us today. Thanks, Craig, for running us through that. Thanks for everybody for the questions you've asked. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you want to do it again, then let us know and we'll set up another one. If you want to get something that's very specific and tailored for you in terms of a demonstration or further conversation, then on your screen there you can see how to contact us. If you want to connect with me directly, then my email address is Ian, that's IAN @datasembly.com, and Craig's, strangely enough, is Craig@datasembly.com. So that's how you can get us. You can call us, you can go to our website at datasembly.com, and I very much appreciate you joining us today. Stay safe. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you all.